I don't know if you heard about this or not, but great news, everybody. No more taxes if you make less than 150K. Sounds great, right? But is this even possible? I'm Charles Randolph, and welcome to Speak Online, where we will review the media coverage, check the spin, and find out what's real regarding this topic. So it's time to watch and reflect. But before we get started, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Also, join us on our podcast on Spotify, and come check out our live streams on TikTok, YouTube, and Rumble, and read our articles on speakonline.com. So, first, I think we should know what Social Security is. So, I got a nice little diagram here that explains this, and it's from a good source of information. It's from the Social Security Administration. And for those who can't see, what it states is, what is Social Security? Its tagline is securing today and tomorrow. Social Security was created to promote the economic security of the nation's people. Came about in the 1930s with the Great Depression. America was facing the worst economic crisis of modern times. On August 14, 1935, President Roosevelt signed Social Security Act as part of the New Deal. It's designed to pay retired workers aged 65 or older a continuing income after retirement. In 1939, survivors insurance came about for families of a deceased worker. 1956, disability insurance for disabled workers and their families. 1965, Medicare, providing health insurance for our beneficiaries. In 1972, Supplemental Security Income, needs-based program funded by the U.S. Treasury General Fund to provide payments to people with limited income and resources who are age 65 or older, blind, or disabled. Children with disabilities can get SSI too. Who do we serve? About 51 million retired workers and dependents, 8 million disabled workers and dependents, 5 million survivors of deceased workers. It's important to know that 1 in 5 Americans currently receive a Social Security benefit, and 1 in 5 are disabled, dependents, or survivors. It is the most successful anti-poverty program in our country's history. Now that we got an overview of what Social Security is and does, we can take a look at some media coverage. One thing I also want to note about this is Social Security is not just supplemental income. It includes this Medicare, disability insurance, and survivors insurance. So, it's a little bit more complex than is often portrayed in the media. Now, let's take a look at this influencer right here. He is named Anthony Brian Logan. He is commonly associated with the right side of politics. And let's hear what his take is on this.
So, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says that President Donald Trump plans on taxing no one who makes less than $150,000 a year. Let's talk about it. How's there?
Slow that down a little bit for everybody. Okay.
Everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick saying that President Donald Trump's plan is to tax no one making less than $150,000 a year. Now, I think this is a brilliant idea. It makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. All right. I'm glad we started there.
And before I get into the video, I'm going to ask you guys one question. Which is the better option? A, the Doge refund check they were talking about at one point. So you would get a one-time check for $5,000, or B, not taxing anyone making less than $150,000 and that being a year-to-year thing. Little bit of context. In Tennessee, if I make $150,000,
I really don't think that is the issue that is being debated regarding this, about what is better or not.
The tax I would pay on that is right around $40,000. So I think it's pretty simple to see which plan makes the most sense. And I think that they both are born from the same thing, which is the Doge savings. And before I go any further, let's get to the clip of Howard Lutnick. Of course, if you want to see the clip in full without my commentary, link as always will be in the description. If you're on IG, visit the link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Who cares?
Howard Lutnick, I believe he is the new Commerce Secretary.
I tell you what, who cares? Donald Trump cares. And when we balance the budget, you know what that means? That means our deficits stop. Interest rates come smashing down. His goal is to have external revenue. You know, the way I think about it, we all are so used to paying taxes. We're so used to it. We have like Stockholm syndrome. You know, don't stop the Internal Revenue Service, God forbid. How about this? The rest of the world leans on our economy, breathes off our economy. Not only is our economy $29 trillion GDP.
Look at this guy just shaking his head. God.
But we consume
Eating it up.
$20 trillion a year. We are the buyer of everybody's stuff. We buy everybody's stuff.
Let's pause right here. Now, this is a point that I was making a while ago. I was talking about China. And I'm like, look, China most certainly needs us. We need them for the productivity that we can actually do here. But they need us because without us, who are they going to sell all their things to? All these factories and whatnot are dependent upon U.S. customers. They can say, oh, we have other people. We got India. We got Europe. Okay, cool. But America is still the engine that makes this whole world operate.
Move on past
people can say whatever they want to say, but reality is reality. But I digress.
So who's more important? The people who sell stuff or the people who buy stuff? So
hasn't that term, like, I digress, become so popularized? Like, oh, you're cool if you use that phrase. Go for it.
We are the buyer of everybody's commodities, products, goods and services. Everything comes from us, right? Let them pay a membership fee. We all understand that model. Let them pay. How about we, you and I, and every single person we know pay less? How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal.
Right on. So again, that is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick talking about Trump's plan to tax no American making less than $150,000 a year. I think it's amazing. I think it's a great idea. And I think that it'll work. Some are going to say, oh,
why? Tell us why. Give us something.
Where are we going to get our tax revenue from, all this and that? Let me get into a little bit of just math. And these aren't exact numbers, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying after I get done. So let's say, for example, again, these are not accurate numbers, but it's going to give you an idea of what the thought process could be.
In other words, this totally isn't going to line up. I'm going to go with it.
Let's say Doge saves $500 billion, with it be $500 billion a year in government expenditures. And let's say the total tax revenue from those who make less than $150 a year, let's say that's $200 billion. So rather than Doge saying, you know what, okay, let's give all Americans a
it's not, by the way. I actually have some numbers, and it's not.
Check for $5,000. Rather than doing that, okay, if you make less than 150, keep that. Don't worry about taxes at all. And as I said from the beginning, that could be $40,000 US every year if you make 150 in a place like Tennessee. And don't go to California. Oh my God, you might end up spending the majority of your money on taxes. You might end up spending more than 50% once you add in federal, state, and the fees. It may go beyond 50%. Rather than sending out $5,000 checks on a one-time basis, let me get that.
Okay. One big thing here, and we'll get into more of the numbers in a bit, but this says a lot about influencers and commentators in general. Okay. So one of his big claims is he's talking about right now. Right now, you get that 150K. What can you do with it? Well, you can go buy more stuff. Yeah, that's great. That does go into the economy. But what about the feasibility of the current programs that we have? For example, Social Security and Medicaid. How are we going to fund those things without that tax revenue coming in? You can have a lot of money, but this is about the long game. This is about ensuring the well-being of the population that gets older, the generations in front of us, and those behind us, ensuring their well-being, our future, theirs, everybody's. That 150K, if you have the expectation of everybody to invest that money in their future, you're crazy. If you think everybody's going to do that, you haven't been around people that much.
$3,000 in savings every year. It's not going to cost. Listen, if the government loses $200 billion, for example, from that tax pool, it's okay because they save $500 billion in Doge savings. So you still come out saving $300 billion a year.
Mind you, we are already in a deficit, right?
I think it makes perfect sense. And then also, here's something else. Weren't they trying to hire like 87,000 new IRS agents? And the majority of your audits, letters getting sent, trying to find money, that's going to go to your smaller taxpayers. I'm not trying to diminish people paying taxes like it's nothing. Oh, it's a small thing. No, it's an important thing. It's small to the government because, listen, the government spends trillions and they set the money on fire. They set it on fire. We see what happens with these people at USAID. I mean, how much money were they getting to do nothing? The Black Lives Matter mural or the square, whatever they want to call that in DC, you know how much it costs to put letters on the ground, yellow paint on the ground that spelled out Black Lives Matter? It cost $8 million, $600,000 to actually demolish it. $8 million to make that. And they had to like do repairs and keep the letters maintained. Okay, that was more money. It was funny because I was watching a video and it was a white lady talking about how she's upset because her company was involved with the letters going in and the maintenance. Of course you're upset because you won't get that money anymore. Rather than that white lady getting millions of dollars to upkeep yellow letters on the ground and say Black Lives Matter, how about we allow taxpayers to not have to get hounded by the IRS for $2,000 that they can't pay? That $2,000 will not do a lot for the federal government, but it'll do a lot for a regular hardworking American person. Okay, it'll do a lot for a family. You got husband, wife, kids. It'll do a whole lot for a family. That $2,000 is a mortgage payment. It's a rent payment. It's medical bills. It's food. For the government, what are they going to do? Try to spend it with USAID, paying some random goober in Annandale, Virginia, $500,000 a year to count how many barnacles are on whales in Sri Lanka or something like this? Stupid stuff. They're going to be upset. Those who are grifting off of USAID money will be.
You know, the short-sightedness of so much of the commentary on this side, it's very frustrating. It's because there's so much more to it, and this reductionist perspective is so simple, but not effective. These are very nuanced, and notice they're broad claims without detail.
Upset that they can't do that anymore, that they can't work remotely. Do you know I saw this device on Amazon, and y'all probably use it. It's a device that jiggles your mouse automatically because when you're doing remote work and you're not at your desk, they can tell when there's inactivity.
You notice how there's no information?
So they buy this device that literally jiggles your mouse for you to pretend to work. And for that, they're getting paid $500,000, $1 million, taxpayer money. Rather than that going, let me just keep more of my own money. Let me not go to the penitentiary to make big rocks to little because I was not able to pay it. Let's not have all these IRS agents hounding American people, which is what they do. They hound the little guy, the small guy. A lot of your audits, a lot of your requests for money, a lot of your letters that's sent to the small guy. Let me keep that money. I think it's a win all the way around. Listen, the taxpayer keeps more of their own money rather than getting a one-time check for $5,000, $1,000, a STEMI. We could keep $30,000, $40,000 every year of our own hard-earned money. The government is not.
I think it's interesting that he's only discussing these two proposed options, one from Doge and then this as well, rather than contrasting it to the reasons why we are not doing this.
Losing, they win regardless because Doge, then the savings that Doge found is much greater, in my opinion, than what they would get from the American taxpayer.
In his opinion.
Who makes less than $150. So the government wins. The taxpayer wins. The IRS is not having to do with that. Maybe some of them might lose.
You could even see in his eyes a little bit where he's questioning that statement. Love it.
Because they don't have a job anymore. And I think the only other loser would be, again, the USAID person making 500 grand a year to count how many frog hairs are on frog legs in a random remote village in Kuala Lumpur or something crazy like this. But as I close, I want to say this. Shout out to Howard Lutnick. Shout out to Donald Trump.
Yo, let me give a shout out to everybody on TikTok. Thank you for watching. You guys are amazing for supporting this, and I really appreciate it.
Shout out to Elon Musk. Shout out to everybody in the government who wants the best.
I know I'm not necessarily the best at interacting. I'm doing my best. It's just because I'm focused on this and actually trying to bring you something of value
for their constituents. Oh, and I got to add one last piece here. This kind of
fantastic. Can't wait to hear it.
Dispels the whole rumor, the whole allegation, the whole notion of President Trump looking out for his billionaire buddies. This looks like a move that's going to help the regular, everyday, hardworking American. Okay, keeping your tax money, that will go a long way, a very long way. I like that a lot more than the Doge savings one-time check proposal. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your take on this proposal to charge Americans zero federal?
Okay, glad that's done. But we got some important things to look at. A lot of things that came from that is like this classic 150K, keep it, you know? But again, what do you do with it? How do we do this? You know, we cut federal programs that will make up for the loss of the money, which you didn't really talk about too much. The taxpayers not getting hounded by the government. You know, this is a common talking point. The money can go to the family. The government wastes the money, helping out the average person, the family. Okay, so that's a lot of the stuff. Regarding if it's going to be able to fund this, for example, like Social Security and Medicare, that really helps out the average family a lot, especially in retirement, right? Especially in retirement and health cost and coverage. You got the claims the government wastes money. Of course, they pick up on the USAID stuff. Okay, maybe there's some waste, but big thing, just because you think it's waste and that's your opinion doesn't mean it's actual waste. Just throwing that out there. There are things that I might disagree with where some of the money is going, but I can understand other people's perspective on the value. I can get it. Okay. So we're going to go into primarily about who this helps. These claims about who these things will actually help. Will it really help the family? And if it's even possible. Now, a couple things I want to do is let's take a look at an article here. This provides a few little videos too, so you can see it in context where some of these discussions are had. And I think that's important so everybody can get an idea. So this article right here, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Trump wants no taxes for Americans earning under $150,000 annually. So the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick revealed that President Donald Trump aims to abolish federal taxes for all Americans earning under $150,000. Here's a point of information that I want to give you, because there is this phrase that it's federal taxes, but what makes up federal taxes? And I did a little bit of research. There is federal taxes, but then we have what's called payroll taxes, and those are the ones that fund Social Security and Medicare. So that is an included federal tax though, but if you hear it discussed in other places when it comes to the payroll taxes and federal expenditures or federal taxes, like they are associated with the same thing. They're thrown in to the same category. I just think that's really important because you may hear people kind of, you know, work their way around that little detail, but they are the same. Now, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick revealed that President Donald Trump aims to abolish federal taxes for all Americans earning under $150,000 annually. Lutnick made the revelation during an interview with CBS News on Tuesday. Quote, "I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. That's what I'm working for. Lutnick told CBS, underscoring a vision that would put thousands of dollars back into the pockets of American families.
How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. And that's what I'm working for.
It's a nice goal, but is it possible? Lutnick elaborated further in a separate interview with Fox News, detailing how Trump intends to finance this massive tax relief plan while balancing the budget. Okay, this is important since we need to know how the hell they're going to manage to do this. Because if you take away all that money, and that's a lot of money, how are you going to fund the things that we have now? Either you're going to have to cut everything, or you're going to have to find some way to fund it now in some other way. So, according to Lutnick, the Trump administration is focused on driving revenue through tariffs, closing offshore tax scams, and slashing excessive spending instead of squeezing the middle class for every last penny. I'm going to copy and paste that, put that in this little document so we can review that. Quote, Lutnick, when the president balances the budget, his first move is going to be he has suggested that he would like to waive taxes for people earning $150K. When we balance the budget, and let me tell you, he's got a plan to do it, we are going to take $1 trillion out of the waste, fraud, and abuse in all of our entitlement system and government waste. Then we are going to raise $1 trillion. Now, mind you, this whole entitlements word, that includes Social Security, Medicare. Really important to keep that in mind. That's what they're talking about. That falls into that category. So they're wanting to cut $1 trillion out of that. That's the Trump card. This is continuing forward. The Trump gold card is going to be a huge revenue producer. Tariffs are going to be, the Trump gold card is not going to be a huge revenue producer at all. Gold card, kidding me. Tariffs are going to be a huge revenue producer. Then we will get rid of all the tax scams, like Ireland making a $75 billion budget surplus. We have got all the ships of the world flying the librarian. That's a weird way to put that. But I mean, imagine a Liberian flag just so they can avoid paying U.S. taxes. You cut all that stuff out and you've got a balanced budget. But on the way, we are going to cut taxes. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. No tax on Social Security. Here's another clip.
Right, we are going to take $1 trillion out of the waste, fraud, and abuse of all of our entitlements and all of our systems and all of our waste, and then we are going to raise $1 trillion. That's the Trump card. The Trump gold card is going to be a huge revenue producer. Tariffs are going to be a huge revenue producer, and then getting rid of all the tax scams like Ireland making $75 billion budget surplus. We've got all the ships of the world having
Them making money isn't a scam.
Imagine
That's like saying a business making money is a scam.
Liberian flag, so they get out of paying U.S. taxes. You cut all that stuff out, you got a balanced budget. But on the way, we're going to cut no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security.
Okay. So, got a lot of different things. One of it's going to be, yeah, dude, the gold card. The gold card's going to do it. Here, check this out, Tom. I did pull up some numbers, unlike our other buddy, and by that, I used one of the most amazing tools we have now to understand things, that being Grok and AI in general. So, the key thing here, right, and we need to keep in mind, is that we're going to lose all of the revenue from everybody who makes less than 150K. So what we need to consider is how much of that is part of our federal revenue, because that money goes out to the people and is distributed. Now, you may not agree to where some of it goes, but let's just focus on two. For example, Social Security and Medicare. So I'm going to read this and just let it break this down. How much of the federal budget is Social Security and Medicare? Social Security and Medicare are major components of the U.S. federal budget. For fiscal year 2023, the total federal budget outlays were approximately $6.13 trillion. Within this, you think the gold card's going to make up for some of that? Anyway, sorry. The total federal budget outlays were approximately $6.13 trillion. Within this, Social Security spending was about $1.24 trillion. Medicare spending was about $0.82 trillion. Adding these together, $1.24 trillion plus $0.82 equals $2.06 trillion. To find that as a percentage, we divide it, we get 33.6. That means Social Security and Medicare together constitute approximately 33.6% of the federal budget. Now, how much of the federal budget is obtained by those who make less than $150,000? So now we know that 33.6% of the federal budget is required and needed to fund Social Security and Medicare. Now let's take a look at how much those who make less than $150,000 pay. The phrase obtained by those who make less than $150,000 is interpreted here as the portion of federal revenue contributed by individuals earning less than $150,000 annually, primarily through taxes, since the federal budget is funded by revenue sources like individual income taxes and payroll taxes. For fiscal year 2023, total federal revenue was approximately $4.9 trillion. The key revenue sources tied to individual earnings are individual income taxes, $2.2 trillion, and payroll taxes, which fund Social Security and Medicare, $1.5 trillion. Together, these amounts to $3.7 trillion. Now we need to estimate how much of this comes from individuals earning less than $150,000. So we go through this. 30% of $2.2 trillion equals $0.66 trillion. We add on the payroll taxes. Okay, that's another $1.5 trillion. The total contribution for those earning less than $150,000, $1.56 trillion. The percentage of the total federal revenue, since the federal budget is funded by total revenue, $4.9 trillion, the share of that revenue from that group is 31.8%. However, the question asks the federal budget. We get to, thus, individuals earning less than $150K contribute approximately 31.8% of the total revenue. So, summarizing all that, Social Security and Medicare constitute approximately 33.6% of the federal budget. Taxes from individuals earning less than $150,000 account for approximately 31.8% total federal revenue, which helps fund the budget. So, basically, we are cutting out everybody, like the entirety of the amount of funds just needed to pay for Social Security and Medicare. I mean, it almost matches 31.8% and 33.6%. It is a large amount of money, and I really think that we should be concerned or asking ourselves the question, because we so often hear, well, we are not going to cut. Yeah, Tom, military spending. I hear that. There is a lot going to it, right? But the amount of money, I mean, how are you going to do it? So you're going to cut millions of dollars. Excuse me, not even millions. You're going to have to cut trillions of dollars in order to make up for it. Or you're going to have to find another source. So they suggest tariffs. Now, how much would you need? Let's take a look. I do have a suggestion on how to fix this, by the way. And it could be fixed in basically immediately. It wouldn't take long. Just to give a hint into what that is, it's the 1960s or something similar to it, marginal tax system. It would take care of it in a moment. It would fund it for 100 years. It'd be amazing. I mean, you could just do it as a temporary fix and all the problems would go away. And it would be a minority of the population that wouldn't like it. And by the minority, I mean those who be making the most money. Okay. There's just so much to these little things where people, it just like sounds like a great idea, but is it really a good idea? I mean, I would love to not have to pay those taxes. Oh, here's another point I want to bring up. So, oh gosh dang it, dude. I get so distracted. It's an ADHD thing that I jump from topic to topic. One thing I wanted to bring up, the whole gold card. Let's explain the gold card and we'll see if we can make up for that, right? So gold card. Trump's gold card. How does it work? Let's look that up. I believe it's like $5 million for this gold card. You know how many people have $5 million just to buy the gold card? Not that many. Thanks everybody for joining on TikTok again. I really appreciate all your support. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I feel like a sellout every time I say that, but I need it, so work with me. Let's take a look at this. So it's a $5 million. Give me like a overall description. So how Trump's planned gold card visa would work. The program would replace an existing program that offers U.S. visas to investors who spend about $1 million on a company that employs at least 10 people. And it echoes similar golden visa programs in countries such as Canada, New Zealand, Malta, and others that have allowed participants to pay a fee or make an investment in order to secure a pathway to residency. Okay, so it's about investing money in the U.S. We can all get behind that. And a pathway to citizenship for $5 million. Are there even enough people in the world, who have $5 million available to make up for the deficit cut? I don't think it would happen. How many people you know that got 5 million? Who would qualify for a gold card? Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has said Trump's gold card would replace an existing program in 2 weeks. So details about who would qualify and what the application process would look like and blah, 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 blah. Of recipients, he said they'll be wealthy and they'll be successful and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. And we think it's going to be extremely successful. Okay. Well, it sounds good. I wish we could get just a stack of gold cards, enough that would add up to, a couple $1 trillion. What was it that we would be cutting? Let's see. What was it that we'd have to make up for again? It would be about 33.6% of the budget. Yeah, so we'd have to make 33.6% of the budget, which was about, let me get the exact number here. 2.6 trillion. Okay, so $2.6 trillion. That's what we would need. Let's take 2.6 trillion, 2.06, trillion. Let's just do this and divided by 5 million. That's a lot of thinking for that. Come on. Okay, coffee break. Thanks again, everybody on TikTok. Walt, couldn't you get the money from companies that is coming in somehow? The money from companies. Can you explain a little bit more like what you mean on that, Walt? I'm curious about what you exactly mean. Like, are you talking about, for example, like with the tariffs, about charging them money? Or do you mean like taxing them at a higher rate? Like a foreign company allowing them to produce goods in our country? Hey, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Have a great day, man. I'm still working on like a time when to do this, but we'll figure it out. Thanks again. Okay, so getting back to that, we would need 412,000 people to purchase the gold card. 412,000 people. And mind you, that would be a year, right? To fund Social Security. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people with 5 million. A lot of people. I think it's a lot more than actually exists in the population. So, interesting. I think the gold card is off the table as a method of making up for that income. Now, let's check out a few other things. Gold card off. Tariffs, that is one. The trillion out of waste, fraud, and abuses. Well, and as they mentioned, that's entitlements, right? Well, one of the ones that I would expect that they would have to cut for that argument to work out for the entitlements would be part of Social Security and Medicare, which they can do that, although I'm very much not for that. Now, what other sources are there? Thanks again, Tom. Let's see what else we have here, everybody. Here's an interesting thing. So, regarding the federal taxes, one thing that needs to be considered is these entitlement programs that so many people enjoy. You know, like Head Start, Department of Education, different things like that. If you like those things and you want to retain those things, and now we've removed that, the federal government is no longer doing it. But let's say the people who live in the state, right? We commonly hear, let the state fund it. Let's say the state says, okay, we can do that, everybody. We know that you like it. We hear you, but we need to fund it. So what's going to happen is then your state taxes are going to increase because the funding for those entitlements that you may want or that you've gotten used to, you're going to have to pay it to someone, and that's going to have to be the state in order to employ it. I think that is a very important message to get out there. You can cut all these things, but the things that you like, that you've gotten used to, that you enjoy, you know, like some of the free babysitting, the Head Start programs, those education programs and grants, the research in medical, those things that really help out a lot of people. If you want to keep those, you're going to have to pay someone in order to get them. And that's going to end up being the state. If it's quote unquote left up to the states, it's going to have to go to someone, and you're going to have to put out that money for it. That's just how shit works. So here, let's take a look at state taxes a bit. Coach Roy, why is it all or nothing? Like, regarding what exactly? And thanks for joining. Are you talking about like being able to fund it or not fund it? Or let's say like reducing the funding to a certain degree? So here's a little bit about state taxes. So the state tax system differs widely. Some states like Texas and Florida have no state income tax, while others like California have rates up to 13.3. Beyond income taxes, states may levy sales tax, property tax, and other fees, which vary by location. For some earning $150,000, state income taxes could range from zero in no income tax states to over $10,000 in high tax states like California or New York or Oregon, can further increase the burden in some areas. Gold card plus other things? Oh, absolutely, dude. It can totally be a multitude of things. It's just the amount. Will it be able to make up for it? But it can be multiple things. So one thing, I don't know if you were here, but we looked into something. Just for the gold cards alone, we would need to match the amount just for Social Security and Medicare. They would need to get 412,000 people every year purchasing these gold cards because they're $5 million each. That's a lot of people. Now, that is that total amount just to fund Social Security and Medicare. But, you know, of course, they're going to bring up the tariffs, or anybody's going to bring out the tariffs. I shouldn't say they are going to or not, but the amount of money, the one issue with the tariffs, you can raise the amount of all these foreign products, forcing the American people to only purchase American products. But one of the issues with that is many Americans can't even afford the American products. And because these foreign products were coming in at and being sold at such a low price, you know, that is what provided people the ability to get some nice things or buy some better food or just survive at a better standard, because the US products are more. The tariffs are meant just to, you know, something costs $10 here in the US to make and sell. You got a foreign product coming in, let's say at $2, we do an amount of tariff to raise it to $10 to match that or more. So it just raises that bar if they're selling less. What? Those aren't heavy regulated. What are you talking about specifically? I need to put the chat in the live stream. I will do that next time. I don't know the answer to that question, if they are heavily regulated or not. And by regulated, do you mean like put on tariffs or just in general? Like, I need a little bit more of a specificity when it comes to that. Okay. Now, let's find a little bit more. I found another good article here. One of these, multiple of tabs, that gives a little bit of a different perspective. This is on the far right. Nope, we read that one. Let's grab one from the other end of the spectrum so we can see how other people are talking about it. Okay. So for this side, and that being the left, it is being framed differently, the topic. This is from The Motley Fool. The big Social Security change President Donald Trump wants to make and why it's unlikely. So they are coming at it a bit from, I'll admit, my perspective on saying, hey, if you cut this, how are you going to fund this? President Trump, during his recent campaign, proposed eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits. Seniors should not pay taxes on Social Security, he wrote on his social media platform in July. Trump then reiterated the point during a Fox and Friends interview in August. The president has seemingly doubled down on his proposal since his returning to Washington in February. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the Trump administration is committed to implementing the largest tax cut in history, which includes ending taxes on Social Security. While I agree that beneficiaries should not pay taxes on Social Security, I doubt Congress will approve that change anytime soon. Here are the important details. So they're focusing more just on the Social Security taxation. Again, it's more cutting in the taxes, but where do you make up for it? The problems with taxing Social Security benefits. One problem with how the federal government taxes Social Security is the income thresholds have never been adjusted. To elaborate, benefits were first subject to taxation after Congress passed a series of amendments in 1983, meant to avoid trust fund insolvency. Legislation enacted in 1993 added a second tier of taxation. Initially, less than 10% of beneficiaries owed taxes on Social Security. Give me 1 second. I'll be there in a sec, Coach. Thank you. But that figure exceeds 50% today. That's because the income thresholds associated with the taxation tiers have never been modified for inflation, even though Social Security payments have gradually increased over time due to regular cost of living adjustments. Another problem is that taxing Social Security effectively amounts to double taxation. Benefits for retirees are based on the amount of income taxed by Social Security during their working years for the government to turn. Okay, this is getting a bit off topic. I think what we need to get to is what Mr. Coach is talking about, which is more about tariffs and bringing labor back to the U.S. So we will take a look at that. How about we take a look at how much revenue can be produced by tariffs? I think that's kind of where you're going with it. Okay. Can I just say one thing? Those who can't see the chat, and this will most likely be on other platforms, I believe that me and Mr. Coach may hold slightly different perspectives, but we are both being very respectful and polite to each other and trying to come to a middle ground and find a solution. And I have a great amount of respect for people like you, sir. And I'm happy you found this channel. And I hope that you will continue to be a part of this, because more people, in my opinion, like you are needed. I think many people can actually come together and agree on a lot of things, but due to how things are framed in the media and how it is communicated to the public, especially with this evolution of influencers, and the engagement strategies of social media companies. It has polarized things such a great deal. And I really hope to change that. That's one of my goals. My education is in communication, so mass media, different things like that, other forms as well. And I really want to create a social movement more on media literacy and how to approach things in a bit of a different way and have some fun. I do like talk some trash. I'm not gonna lie. I do enjoy it, but you gotta have a little fun, right? But to target certain people that I believe that are bad. And to give an example, I do, coach. I do. If you're a coach, Coach Roy, I bet you talk a little trash too. But all right, anyway, I will get back to this for a minute and we'll look into this. All right. I'll talk some trash about some specific people here in a bit. If you stick around long enough, it will happen. Trust me. Okay. So, how much revenue will Trump's tariffs raise? Good question. For those who can't see this, this is from CFRB, which, you know what? We'll read this and I'll make a note to actually find out who these people are if these claims aren't legit or they just seem off. So let's look into, what was it? CF. Okay. All right. Back to it. How much revenue will Trump's tariffs raise? On February 1st, 2025, President Trump signed 3 executive orders imposing new tariffs on goods from China, Canada, and Mexico. Below is an update of our estimate of the potential revenue raised from these tariffs prior to their official announcement. President Trump's tariffs included 10% additional tariff on all imports from China that went into effect on February 4th. We estimate that this tariff will raise $20 billion in revenue through the rest of the calendar year 2025 and $200 billion through the fiscal year 2035. Interesting. So $20 billion in revenue through the rest of the calendar year, so that's 1 year, and $200 billion all the way to 2035. So we can make a note of that 20 billion. We'll just say 20 billion per year. Right there. And that was based on the 10% additional tariff. Was that specific to just China? So President tariffs included 10% additional tariff on all imports from China. Okay, here they go into 2 separate tariffs. A 25% tariff on imports from Canada, except for some Canadian energy and resource imports that will be tariffed at 10%, and a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico have been put on hold until March. We estimate these additional tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico would increase revenue by about $110 billion over the rest of the calendar year, 2025, if they are allowed to go into effect. If made permanent, we estimate they would raise $1.3 trillion through the fiscal year 2035. Interesting. On a conventional basis, accounting for economic effects, we estimate the combined tariffs in both the enacted and delayed would raise $1.3 trillion through 2035. Okay, so that gives us an idea. So we got the 20 billion per year, and this is just, that's from China. And then we got, what was it, 110 billion per year out of Mexico and Canada, making for about 130 billion per year. Okay. Let's see what else they got here. Interesting. Okay, so just to wrap that up in general, for this year, it'd be about 120 billion. From 2025 through 2035, it would be about 1.3 trillion. So let's say we assume that we'll make 120 billion from Mexico, Canada, and China. Okay? So that's 120. And then I really, just be honest, I don't think that we're going to be getting a lot out of the gold card. But I'll say, like, how about 100? I'll say $1 billion. And I think that's being nice. I do. I'm willing to go 10, but okay, I'll say 2 billion. All right. So how about 122 billion a year? We are still in the hole just to fund that a great deal. It was in order to fund Social Security and Medicare. I thought it was like 2. Wasn't it like 2% total federal revenue? What was it? Individual. It was like 33.6. Where is it? I drank too much coffee. I'm looking at too much stuff. I know it's over $1 trillion. Social Security and Medicare constitute 33.6% of the federal budget. Let's see. 1.3, 1.23, 31.8. Here we go. Total contributions, 1.56 trillion. So we're still a little short. And by short, I mean a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions. Is there something else I can look into a bit, Coach? Like, I think that gives a general idea. I know that's only, China, Mexico, and Canada. I know that there are other countries. Those are our primary trading partners, though. I believe that's pretty true. I know that we're now hearing discussions regarding Europe and what actions we should take with them. Yeah, the European Union. That's what I thought was coming up. I can look into that. I can look into that. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to put in how much revenue can be produced by tariffs from the EU. EU to impose counter tariffs. Sounds like fun. American, yeah. And Trump tariffs, the economic impact. Hours worked. Trump tariffs, 25% of steel international trade. Benefits of free trade are mentioned. Trump's tariffs will hit the EU products. Let me do a search in Grok. It might be able to give an estimation based on like certain products. Let's say provide a reasonable estimate on revenue or let's see, yeah, of revenue from specific. I mean, I don't know if it should be specific or just a general tax like we're doing with China. I would assume that it would be just much easier just to put a 10% tax on all EU goods. So provide a reasonable estimate of revenue earned from a 10% tariff on all goods coming to the US from Europe. Oh, shoot. I should have put European Union. Thank you, everybody who has been watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is good times. I'm enjoying this. Believe it or not, I actually enjoy doing research. It's good times. Okay, so here's what I got from this. Let me zoom in a bit more so you can see this. Let me make sure you can. Go back up here. All right. So I'm just going to read this whole thing based on that query. Okay. To estimate the revenue from a 10% tariff on all goods imported from the European Union to the United States, we need to determine the total value of these imports and then calculate 10% of that amount. Let's proceed step by step to arrive at a reasonable estimate based on available trade data. Step 1, determine the value of EU goods imported to the US. The value of goods imported from the EU to the US is the foundation of this calculation. Recent trade data provides us with figures for 2023 and 2024. 2023 data, the EU exported 503 billion pounds worth of goods to the US. Since this figure is in euros, we need to convert it to US dollars using an appropriate exchange rate. The average exchange rate for 2023 was approximately 1.08 US dollar per euro. Calculation. They do that, we get 543.24 billion. 2024 data, US import data indicates that the US imported $556.6 billion worth of goods from the EU. This figure is already in US dollar and reflects the value of goods from the US perspective, which is relevant since the tariff is applied upon entry to the US. Since the query does not specify a year, using the most recent data, 2024, is reasonable, especially as trade values tend to increase over time, and the 555.6 billion figure aligns with U.S. import statistics, likely reported on a CIF cost insurance freight basis, the standard for tariff calculations. Thus, we will use 555.6 billion as the total value of goods imported from the EU to the US. Okay, calculate the tariff. All right. Based on 10% tariff on all goods. No exceptions at all. The import value, 555.6 billion, 10%. It'd be 55.56 billion if it was on everything coming from the European Union. So that'd be 55.6 billion. We're not yet there. We'll just round up a lot and I'll just say 200 billion. I'll throw in a little bit more money for that gold card. I'll read this just because this is based off assumptions and considerations. It may be important to bring up a further question. Static trade volume. The calculation assumes that the volume and value of imports remain unchanged after the tariff is imposed. In reality, a 10% tariff could increase prices, potentially reducing demand and import quantities due to price elasticity. However, for a rough estimate, we assume current trade levels persist. I'm reading what you say, Coach. Chat said shift to value added tax 8% to 15% on goods and services. Are you talking about as a result of the tariff? I'm looking. In order to reach goal, that you would need an 8 to 15% tariff in order to do it. Just on the EU in order to make up for it? I'm not sure. Based on a 10% flat, that would get us 55.6 billion in revenue. Value added tax on American. Value added tax. I believe that that's a term, a specific term that you're using, correct? Value added tax. And I'm not familiar with that specific term. It sounds like a piece of jargon. I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that it's a term used to mean a specific thing in a specific discussion. I'm going to read this just because it might be good information for other people to consider. The comprehensive coverage, that is an assumption based on this, that the tariff applies to all goods without exemptions as stated in the query. CIF value, the 55.6 billion is assumed to be the CIF value, which includes the cost of goods, insurance, and freight, the typical basis for tariff assessments. There is a lot of things to consider. A lot of things to consider. But I don't think we would be able to get there, to be honest. We can get some of the way there. Let's just say 200 billion. But we're going to have to get at least another 800 billion from somewhere else or cut it. And mind you, we're already in a deficit, right? So how much does let's say we go full on and we cut everything out of USAID. Just everything. Just say, screw it, throw it away. How much is the USAID budget in total? Now, I'm not for this, but I'm just throwing this out there. 1.9 billion. Let's see. In the fiscal year 2025, the Agency for International Development, USAID, had 1.09 billion distributed among its 3 subcomponents agencies. Annual budget 40 billion in appropriations. What the data says about US foreign aid, the 71.9 billion in foreign aid that the government spent in fiscal year 2023. Okay, so it does differ. Let's just round it up to, let's just say 100 billion. Why not? Let's say that cutting USAID, everything, which many people would get behind. Personally not. That would get us to 300 billion. Right there. Still got at least another 700 billion to go. what other entitlements or things do you believe people could get behind? I believe that they started there because one, it's a good source of finding cherry-picked events in order to justify certain behaviors. But I'm not sure. I mean, the main source of funding that we have, other than the military, is Social Security, or by not funding, but where we, take the most money from when it comes to funding is Social Security, Medicare. Shift America to consumption tax then. Okay. I will look into consumption tax in a second, but I do want to throw something out here. And I know it's not popular, maybe, when it comes to the whole regulation and taxation, but it is a solution. And if I don't get back to consumption tax, just yell at me. So back in, let's say, I think it was like 1960s. In 1960s, it was what was the term? I think I wrote it down here. It's notes. Not a flat tax. Not like a variable tax. Gosh dang. Oh, marginal tax system. Okay. In the 1960s, we had what's called a marginal tax system. And prior to popular belief, we actually had a time in this country where the 1% was charged quite a bit, like up to 91% for incomes. In this case, I believe it was above 200,000, approximately 1.8 million in today's dollars, adjust for inflation, though it decreased to 77% by 1969. I want to show a picture here of the wealth gap and line this up with this time frame. Because I find this really interesting. That goes back to 1989. Go back to that's 80. I want to see 1960. Because I think that they actually intersected. 1950, 1960. Yeah. Labor income coefficient. Here. This is good. Oh, and it's from a good source too. Okay, it's from ResearchGate. All right. So this is the historical economic inequality in the U.S., the wealth, blue, and labor income, orange, inequality pre-taxes in the U.S. for 1930 through 2010. The wealth inequality is quantified by the share of wealth owned by the richest 10% of the population. The income inequality is measured using the Gini index, citation of 19. Data is taken from Piketty and Sayez. Okay. So we enacted a lot of those policies around 1960s, and you can see the time there's like this intersection where it actually came together, where things were pretty, on the same par. And then things changed. Things changed quite a bit. But if we enacted not even something like that extreme, By that, like, let's say 80% on those making, let's say, $1 million or more a year. You know, that's a very small percentage of the population. Hell, dude, let's go 5 million so you can have fun on the weekends, right? You gotta have, never mind, I'm not gonna go there. But anyway, depending on how much fun you want to have, you might need an extra million. All right. Okay. But yeah, let's say on those just making 5 million, if you hit it with a flat tax, like, let's say 60%, we would not need, I mean, we could lower the amount of money that we are getting taxed. And by that, I mean, we probably middle class and still funded. Coach Roy says 70%, 91 in 1960s. Wow, not sure if that will fly, right? Isn't it crazy that it wasn't that long ago? I mean, it makes it sound absolutely, you know, just like an abhorrent thing to even consider now. But it wasn't that long ago in our history, you know? And it worked. It really worked. It really, really worked. And the thing is, if we just did that for a year, let's say 91%, just for a year, dude, all these problems, it would go away. Just for a year. Just say, hey, just suck it up. Go bitch somewhere else. Let it be handled. You won't have to hear about this again. And it'd be solved. It'd be solved. And hell, if you did it with that amount of money, then we wouldn't have to pay taxes either. Right? I agree. It would be amazing, and it would change our world and how we communicate about this topic so much. Just imagine the amount of, like, political talking points that would instantly go away on both sides. Like, what would we talk about? That would be 25% of it right there. We would have to talk about policy or things that would actually give information to the public to consider, rather than, hey, this guy's a douchebag or something like that, or she. And so now, mind you, I would ask Mr. Coach Roy to consider sharing this information to other people. Does it work? Now, the 91%, that's going to instantly, like, turn people off. So, you know, we can ratchet it down a couple notches, you know, just go for like a 3 on the dial. And let's say like 60%. I'm pretty sure that would cover it too. Just to sell it a little bit better. You know what I mean? Gotta sell it. And see what people think. Because it's not that unreasonable. I mean, dude, you're still going to have a good time. Still going to have a good time. I mean, if you're making 5 million, I mean, you can get taxed all you want. You're still going to have a good time. Let me get a historical graph of those taxes. Oh my God. Historical graph of tax, marginal tax. Yeah, here, check this out. This is good stuff right here. For those who can't see this, this is from the Tax Policy Center, Urban Institute, and Brookings Institution. Good spot. The stats, historical highest marginal income tax rates. This is good. I really like this. This is legit. Should be able to see this. Okay. So in 1913, the top marginal rate was 7%. We jacked it up for a little while. 1921 to 73%. Chilled out 25% for a bit. Bumped it back up to 81% in 1940s. Got all the way up to 94% actually in 1944. Wow, dude. That is intense. 94%. I would not be pro taxing them at 94%, to be honest. 1948, 82. Wow. Wow. I didn't realize it was so high for so long. I mean, even to 1986, this was 50%. Up to 50%. And then we really cut it back. We cut it all the way down. It seems to be that we've been rocking it at 35 to 39% for a long time, 37% for a while. Over the last 5 years, I expect it to be cut more. But just imagine if we did that for a year. The amount of money that would come in be significant. It'd be awesome, actually. We wouldn't have to worry about this stuff. Wouldn't have to worry about it at all. So, next up, you say, how much do we save without all the waste and fraud? How much? So that is a tough question, Mr. Coach, because a lot of that, in my opinion, is dependent on how you defined what is waste and abuse. That fraud, that's a very specific thing. I don't think that we actually have had any fraud yet pointed out. But the waste, a lot of that is dependent on just how you perceive it as waste. You know, that goes to, like, let's say, combating AIDS in foreign countries, different things like that. You know what I mean? I know that it's kind of lame because, of course, I can say, hey, dude, don't you want not young children to die and that kind of thing? And I get it. And I'm not like doing that moral argument, but you know what I mean? Like that's what other people are going to throw out. And like, that's what they're going to focus on. The main thing that comes with like the USAID that you'll hear and that I do believe in is it is a soft way of promoting the US without our military. And we have been to quite a few places. In some ways, we do kind of owe a debt to certain countries that, maybe we've done some things too. But there's a lot of power in just having the American flag next to a good thing in a population that's growing up. If you can cognitively associate, hey, America with your food on the table, that's going to grow a generation of people that will most likely not hold resentments against America. That's my take on a lot of it. That, and I think that we are affluent and we can help a lot of people, I think. But the waste, again, if you can give me some specific examples, Coach, that you are maybe like referring to. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind and why I said it was the USAID stuff. The swamp. Okay, so those can't read this. Coach says, you right, but not about that stuff. We do good talking about the swamp lizards or the blind. Yeah. So I think this goes to like the comments of, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, but what a lot of people go to when they're talking about like the bureaucracy. Yeah? Am I on the right track? Like the bureaucracy of the government. because I know that's a common thing that I hear. And one thing that gets me is like, what is exactly meant by that bureaucracy? Like, who are these specific people? Now, I mean, are we just talking about like everybody that like we know, like all the douchebags that are just placating to the audience? Or just the red tape, the regulations, that and crazy studies? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're talking about like I know what you're referring to. The only thing is those really, I mean, they're a lot of money to us. You know what I mean? To us. But when it comes to that federal, like the budget, it's not that much. Like, it's not going to get us very far. Because I know what you're talking about it. The only reason why I'm not saying it, by the way, is because some of my trash talking and how I communicate in some ways when excited, TikTok doesn't necessarily like. So I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm just not stating it explicitly. We can... Cool, thanks. I think it would be... The idea of the bureaucracy, that does interest me. Let's do some type of search, and let me use Grok, actually. Like, how about this? Define and provide media examples or exemplars from the media. That is about bureaucracy. Ignore my spelling. It's really interesting how words change and how they're used and how certain things that were once a good thing are now a bad thing. So here's the definition of, here's the definition of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a system of administration or management characterized by hierarchical structure, standardized rules, and formal procedures. It is typically found in large organizations such as governments or corporations, where decisions are made by administrators or officials rather than elected representatives. While bureaucracy aims to ensure efficiency and consistency, it is often criticized for leading to inefficiency, excessive red tape, and lack of flexibility. Examples of bureaucracy in the media. Here are some well-known examples from different types of media that illustrate bureaucracy. Television, The Office. Okay, that's not exactly what I was talking about. But I think that definition, that encapsulates both sides, the good thing and the bad thing. I think the one thing to consider is how, when it comes to our mind today, when we use that word bureaucracy, it is no longer associated with this top definition, or rather this secondary one. The instant things that come to mind when someone says bureaucracy is the criticisms for leading to inefficiency, excessive red tape, and a lack of flexibility, and to ask ourselves why that has happened. And I want to throw this out there. One of the common things that is used, and we call this like agenda setting in the media, and this has to do with campaigning, is, we tell people what to think, but not, or, you know, we don't tell people what to think. Oh my gosh, drank too much coffee. We don't tell you what to think, but we tell you what to think about. So rather than telling you like bureaucracy is bad, like straight up bad, you wait a while and you associate these negative things to this term until whenever you think of bureaucracy, only these bad things come up. Because it's been a while. I don't know if I've ever thought of bureaucracy as a good thing, actually. Ever. I think I've always had it just associated in my mind as this bad entity of inefficiency and excessive red tape. And I guarantee you that there was a time when this word wasn't used in a bad way. You know what I mean? But with time, things change. And we see this like a lot with, you know, like illegal, or we see this a lot with immigrants, how people were once immigrants and now, you know, they're illegal alien criminals. Like now when we say immigrants, what comes to mind are these like horrible associations of like these criminals and killers and stuff like that. And it's sad that that happens. Because of course not all of them are, but that is what is associated with them, which I hope changes. All right. Well, Mr. Coach and everybody who has been watching, I really appreciate everyone joining in and all the support as usual. I'm going to come up with like a specific time frame of when to do this kind of thing. So it will become a more stable type of event scheduled. And so I hope to see returning people joining and us continuing to have good conversation and hoping to get good information out there in a cooperative fashion. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.